Hitting the go live button. Let me see. I'm going to check. Everybody, we had terrible technical difficulties. But good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not even sure if this is working. I'm going to check if we are streaming live. Yeah, okay, we figured something out. So that's good news. We had to use a backup piece of software. Unfortunately, we are not able to stream live to these two other channels here. But don't forget, subscribe at the link below for Mando Minutes and, of course, for Marty Party, the legend. Both legends are here. We got this working. We'll make this rough and ready. And we'll go through a lot of content today. Sorry, CTO is sick, and we had technical difficulties. It was a complete catastrophe. But before we jump in...
holiday
James, can we share the link you sent us onto X?
Yes.
Send us a link to share. Or maybe why don't you post it on yours and then I'll grab it from there.
Yeah, it is posted on mine already.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So
how you act under duress. Okay,
exactly.
This is how we're acting under duress.
Exactly.
Got it. I've got it.
So we're gonna make it happen anyway, and we'll also hopefully I'll be able to share the slides if I can, but who knows what's gonna happen. Woohoo. Yeah, that's weird. I'll have 1 month. Well, we do have a deck, but I don't know how good it'll be. And we have a large agenda. We'll probably end up just talking to stuff while we juggle things. And now I've completely lost the... Let me see. Did I lose everybody? I don't want to.
I'm still here, man.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Yeah. All right. So let's just jump into the story. This is called Peak or Parabola. And we'll try to share stuff as we can. But a lot of people this week around are very, very concerned. And happy Memorial Day, everybody, as well in the United States.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah. So we got people traveling in hotel rooms and everybody's, yeah. But we'll turn up every Monday. Thank you guys again, you're legends for dealing with it. There was a couple of very interesting stories that hit this week. We're going to talk about the market outlook. People are still concerned. Should they sell here? Is this the top of the bull? And we had another super question that was, okay, is it too late to buy into crypto? We have, you know, the way you have in New York City, the cab drivers start talking about Bitcoin. And now all of a sudden we've got people who are late to the party and they're asking, is it too late to buy? I'm interested in your thoughts on what you advise those. Also, there's talk of, shout out to a legend, Mr. Visser, but there's talk as well of a situation, Jordy Visser, of a potential short squeeze for Bitcoin coming in. And it's not for the reasons you may think. Did you guys see that Pomp video? It was very interesting. So we'll talk about that. And that basically talks about how long-term interest rates are rising. Nobody has control of the curve, and that could lead to a massive FOMO event into Bitcoin, and people are caught offside. We'll also talk about what's going on with the cycle and any black swans we see on the horizon. We had tariff tantrums part 6 with the EU. We have news of different type of alt season dynamics. Kraken is going to launch tokenized stocks on Solana. Marty, you talking about Bybit and Solana. And Mando will talk about Hype and James Wynn and all that good stuff. Last week we talked about Hype, and boy, Hype just eclipsed Sui on the crypto market cap too. And Sailor's buying again, and CBDCs are coming to Europe, unfortunately. And X is kryptonizing payments, and that's coming soon too. So a lot to talk about. But where would you guys like to start? Anywhere?
I mean, we can talk about the current Bitcoin price and price action. If you remember, I was missing on the last show. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
And I called all-time high, so I nailed that. I think, you know me, I think we're following the Wyckoff. We're marking up to 125,000. They're not going to give you many entries. When they get there, it'll either be reaccumulation or distribution. Reaccumulation will be another 300 days of sideways actions at around 125, or redistribution means we're going to proceed to what would call a blow off top. That's where I think people need to be. As far as if they should enter now, I think they're late. I wouldn't enter right now. I think let it play out. Uh, you've missed the juicy entries, but I'm extremely bullish, and we'll go over why. There's many reasons why.
Yeah, that's interesting, Marty. You did say you wouldn't enter now. So imagine, there was a great article. It was like a Australian interview with a couple from Brisbane, and the fastest growing demographic for Bitcoin holders are boomers out of Australia because they have no other shot. And that caused a little bit of FOMO amongst the boomer generation. And now they're wondering, okay, what is this Bitcoin stuff? Is it too late to join the party? And traditionally, every cycle we get to the same situation whereby everybody hears about the Bitcoin price on the news and they start thinking, oh, and normally the last phase of the bull cycle is when retail that have never been there before jump in. Mando, what do you see in this regard? Could it be one of the situations?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I'm thankful I don't have to eat my hat. I made a call last week that we were going to hit all-time high, and we did. CTO reminded me of the chat. I think I agree with Marty here in that it's a little bit of a difficult time to go all in. We're kind of drifted now below the previous all-time high, or at least we're trading kind of around that sort of level. I think you might get one more sort of liquidation wick down to like 100K area, maybe like 102, 101, which you're definitely meant to buy, but it can be a little bit volatile, particularly with like altcoins to be buying it at this exact time. Like there was a time to buy and a time around here. I think it can be very volatile, even on like a daily basis. So, but do I think that Bitcoin has a different narrative at the moment, and that's why it's being strong? For sure. Like Bitcoin dominance has not really moved. It's still at 64%. I was bullish on ETH alongside Bitcoin, but Bitcoin just has a relentless bid for it at the moment. And I think that is mainly because of what's been going on in macro, the weakness in the dollar, the fear about bond yields, and just generally about fiat in many different countries. And this is going to be another cycle or another like move here where it feels like Bitcoin dominance might actually go higher during the move, or at least doesn't look like it's going to go materially lower. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I think this move is being driven by Bitcoin first, for sure. And it is boomers or people with wealth looking to protect themselves against some sort of financial catastrophe that seems to be happening at the moment with bond yields and fiat.
Yep. I like that take.
Yeah,
And
there's a couple of things that I've been, just so you guys might not be aware. I'm from, obviously in South Africa, and there's extreme political issues in South Africa, and $50,000 reserves you're not allowed to take out more than $50. So there are literally tens of millions of dollars moving through Bitcoin to get money out of South Africa.
did you say
Things
$50
like
or $50,000?
50,000 is your limit.
Wow.
Right. So you can imagine. So here we go again. Bitcoin used as a life raft, and it's being worked perfectly. The other thing I think is that there is, like you said, Mando, I agree, just a large buy bid. There's a bidding price right below the price. The exchanges typically can't flush like they would normally. I think that has been pushed by treasury reserve companies. We saw over 6 of them in Bitcoin open up over the 2 weeks using either SPACs or, poorly performing NASDAQ stocks, simply rebranding from a medical company to a treasury company in crypto, seeing 1,000% gains, pulling back. But this is a narrative. We've seen it with Solana, at least 3 or 4 of them. This is what's happening. And so those institutional buyers are bidding the price up. They're not looking for lows, looking for dips. And so these two assets have a lot of pressure to move up. I would say that between 114 will be our upper range, and probably like the 103, like Nando mentions, at the very lowest of the range. And I think we'll probably live in that 110 range and consolidate for the next couple of weeks.
Interesting.
That's what I'm thinking. Yep.
Interesting indeed. So let's talk a bit about. Tried to pull up the deck, but I couldn't. But this story is has got a lot of people excited potentially. And normally, when long ends of the curve, and Manda, this is your TradFi background here, long-term interest rates spike. That rattles markets and it makes people go risk off, so they sell their Bitcoin. But Jordi Visser argues that the higher long-term interest rates all over the world, we're talking Japan, Europe, etc., Germany, US, driven by increasing bond yields, signal a lot of stress in the system, in the fiat system, particularly due to US growing national debt, the downgrade by Moody's, etc. Everybody's freaking out. And this, for the first time ever, because Bitcoin is now an asset class unto itself and it's decentralized outside the fiat system, he believes this could potentially trigger a big move to this asset. Like we saw what happened in California with, I remember the weekend with the SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, who I used to actually bank with, coincidentally. But the weekend that they went under, you had all these people with literally 10-digit, 11-digit deposits trying to find a way to convert their bank cash into Bitcoin over the weekend, and Bitcoin spiked as this bank was being shut down. So do you see, Mando, a potential for this? And if people are caught offside, we could see a short squeeze from hell if the bond market death spiral continues.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be called a short squeeze, but it definitely would be a squeeze. Let's put it that way. There's a good way to track this, actually. And you may have not even heard about these sort of things since 2008, but you can actually buy credit protection against different governments.
Yep.
Credit default swaps are their names, and I used to trade those specifically. And the US CDS spread is the highest it's been for many years right now. I think it hit the highest for over a decade last week. There's some worry about the debt ceiling not being raised, but in general, you're seeing this across all sovereigns right now. There is credit risk coming back to sovereigns, and that is a big change. Particularly what you're starting to see is on G20 countries. So the obvious names have been mentioned are things like Japan and the UK, and obviously now even the US is moving. But this is a global movement that people are starting to get suddenly a little bit worried that these governments might get caught up in a situation here where interest rates continue to rise, and then they face some form of debt situation, either because they have too high interest costs relative to their tax revenues, or it's just seen as unsustainable for them to keep such high levels of debt, which would force some form of restructuring. So this is something that is happening. I haven't seen this for a while. The last time this has really happened is alongside some of the debt ceiling worries, but this is happening across a lot of different sovereigns, and I do think that it's one of these we've spoken about before. If something like that was to happen, like watch out below. Like things
Absolutely.
can really go very quickly, but then Bitcoin is a safety. Will be one of the things that would rally very, very strongly if something like that were to happen.
I agree. Yeah, the 30-year. I've seen a graph. Have you guys seen the graph? There's a graph going around of the US, UK, and Japanese 30-year yields. It's going like a meme coin. So the US reached 5.15%. Remember, they have to refinance $7 trillion this year. So there's a whole issue where the US needs rates down. They can't get them down. They're actually going up. They need to refinance. People are losing faith in the nations. Bonds are selling off. What are people going to do with their money? They don't want to go back to fiat, to savings accounts, to money markets. They're coming to Bitcoin. There's a lot of vectors to Bitcoin right now, and we're seeing that in the bid ask. And that's why I think we're not going down. They're not going to give us an entry.
Yeah.
Not for a while. Go ahead.
Well, let's a shout out to Jordi Visser. This is his concept, and he's a former hedge fund manager. And he does believe we are getting ready for a crazy short squeeze. So at last I've got the slideware kind of up. The next big kind of story is this. Bitcoin market outlook. Let's try, people are still asking again, what's the deal? Okay, Bitcoin is unto itself, running away with everything else. How much more can we go? Some of the price targets are crazy. I calculated all the analyst price targets from all the different players are at $278,000 for 2025. And we're at just shy of 110. We keep on, 110 seems like the new resistance. But then what is going to happen next? We're seeing huge amounts of activity and development on, hello, everybody. Another surprise guest in Marty's world. I love it. There'll be memes about that later. But we're seeing huge amount of development for layer one solutions out there. We're seeing also a very strange situation where the world is beginning to incorporate crypto into everything. We'll talk about X payments, tokenization of stocks. And people are saying, like last week we touched on the fact that everything is bifurcating and merging together, and what was old is now different or new again. I'm kind of rambling here, but I'll go to you first, Marty. What do you think is happening, the conversion between crypto and traditional worlds?
The most staggering news I saw last week was the Wormhole introducing a couple of new technologies to bring Doge as a native Solana token. I thought that was pretty profound because there's no way Musk doesn't know about that.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing convergence in older assets which have now proven to be immovable, more store of values moving to the execution chains. We're seeing that. Obviously, we'll talk about the Sui situation, which I think is very bullish personally, but we'll talk about why I do. I also think Solana with their Seeker phone, their Accelerate in New York, with the Sui thing, with a lot of attention, real world assets coming to Solana, a lot of new partnerships. They're getting a sort of rebirth in price and being extremely powerful. But then I think the big story is the whole of TradFi is starting to collateralize with Bitcoin. I think we're seeing a flippening of such, and we could talk about that as well. I think it's no longer a speculative asset, and that's the key point.
Yeah, in fact, let's touch on Sui. Let's get that out of the way. A lot of people are now calling this the Sui, what it was, a search or something, being some type of rug inside job. That's fake, though, isn't it? It was definitely a hack.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest misconception is that Cetus was involved with Sui. Understand that I think people's lack of understanding of the ecosystems is at play, and it's good that we get it out of the way. Solana, Sui, Bitcoin, and Ethereum are databases, and there's a lot of applications that use these databases, dexes, apps, and Cetus is just one of those apps. And they had a bug. I know the bug very well, and the bug was exploited by a bad actor. Or could be seen as a money glitch, right? Somebody found a feature through the system where they could go to Cetus and using certain, configurations and tricks, make it produce more than it had, and manage to get a lot of money off of it. Not of Sui, of Cetus and its pools. And then the Sui network stepped up, which is what you want to see, and did what they needed to protect the user funds. And obviously that went really well. The part that people don't like is the fact that validators and foundations can all step up and vote to freeze money.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to understand that proof of stake is not proof of work. And the point of proof of stake is to allow features, and it has features and has built features in these networks to allow validators to filter out addresses. You can't do that in Bitcoin. You can't do that in Ethereum. You can do that in Solana. You can do that in Sui. You can do that in any layer one that's come across. And the reason is for this exact reason. If there is a collusion on one of the ecosystem projects where there is extreme loss of money, will do just sit back and let the criminal win, or do let the validators vote? It's their stake. Do they want to participate? Do they want to allow the address? And I think in this case, the speed at which Sui community came together was quite outstanding. And the community really came together. Most of the validators filtered that out. They saved most of the money, which will go back to the customers. So it once again gets us back to, the bell curve of decentralization.
Exactly.
Tower decentralization, right? Should we do nothing and let the criminals win? Should we do everything and stop the criminals entirely? Or should we allow a governance supermajority vote and let the validators who own the stake, who are putting up the risk, make that decision for us? And
So
that's what happened.
And Marty, it sounds like you're on the page of, yes, Dino, decentralized in name only, but on rare exceptions, you can intervene. Mando, what's your take on this? Decentralized in name only, because it's a very gray area. It has some people very upset, and it has some other people saying, yeah, it's warranted.
I am less of a decentralization maxi, and I know that might put me at odds with certain people in crypto, but I agree to having a roadmap towards more decentralization, and I think that any good crypto team is doing that. At the same time, particularly as you're trying to get adoption and where you are on the adoption curve, I think sometimes centralization can help. Solana has had more centralization at times in its history, and I think it actually helped it. For example, and this is in both in terms of the validators and like the Nakamoto index, that sort of stuff. But what I would look at is also just like how close the foundation is to the builders. ETH's foundation talks about politics and is just in Switzerland and no one really knows what it does. The Solana Foundation actively works alongside some of the main projects in the space and pushes them. And I think Sui similarly does that. It actually helps the BD of the actual chain. So I have less of an issue that Sui gets called centralized after this. I think at this stage, it's not necessarily the worst thing. I don't think it's great to have a hack of that size. And I think, if I'm honest, I think Sui had a burgeoning DeFi landscape, but like it wasn't anywhere near as big as Solana's in terms of activity, or in terms of at least the users that I see using it. So I think this is quite painful for that, but I wouldn't necessarily criticize them for centralization.
James, can I give a little summary here just to give some people some context that I think newer people who came into the space don't know?
Yeah, of course.
I've been around since 2010, and I remember implicitly, firstly, Bitcoin had a very similar thing happen to it in 2010. There was an exploit on the network, and they didn't have this ability. The software didn't have this ability for validators to, filter out addresses or even have a vote. And so they decided at the highest level, which is arguably quite interesting, who was the highest level, to roll back the chain. They rolled back, roughly, I think it was 184 billion blocks at the time in 2010. So there's various strategies one can take when this happens. Bitcoin rolled back the chain. They did again in March 2013. Software version, I think it was 0.8, caused the blockchain to split, and they did again roll back the blockchain. Now, people must understand what that means is bringing down all the validators, going back to the archive and rebuilding the database, a massive, risky undertaking. The room for error is huge. So they did that in Bitcoin for a similar problem. Then, you were there, Nando, in 2016, Ethereum had the DAO hack, which was also very similar. Bad actor, found an application, money glitch, exploited it, and I think they ran off with what's worth $10 billion of Ethereum right now. It was 1.9 million Ethereum was stolen. Ethereum came together, and this is very historic because they also voted to not only roll back, but to fork Ethereum. So they took Ethereum's code base, patched it, and rebuilt what is called Ethereum. The old chain where the hack was remained ETC, Ethereum Classic. That's why, people ask, what is Ethereum Classic? So these are two cases where Bitcoin and Ethereum in the past have had very similar things, where somebody found an infinite money glitch in one of the applications, exploited it, and the network came together. They didn't quite have the features or capability to vote, filter, and stop. So they rolled back or forked. Now, Sui had the same thing happen. Okay, this is literally the same thing. A coding bug that went through 5 auditors. That's also important to know. 5 industry auditors passed Cedus's code base. So nobody in those 5 auditors caught the bug, which is quite interesting, I think. Shows the complexity of Web3 code and the incredible math involved in crypto. But it was a math error, it was a rounding error that was exploited. And Sui thankfully had this feature. Okay, it's a feature. The feature is you own a stake, it's your validator, you have the opportunity. Should we filter? You vote. And they did so. And the foundations didn't vote. All the validators voted, and they didn't need to roll back the blockchain. The point being, they didn't need to roll back the blockchain. And I think, to me, that's highly bullish. It proves that this is possible. It proves the use case. It proves that this saves people's money. And I think at the end of the day, if the money is returned, it's a good thing. So, yes, it's going to face the dunking. People are going to jump up and say, oh, you shouldn't be able to do that. But like I said before, I think this is a good turning point in history when we look at it like a bell curve. On the left side is full decentralization, like Bitcoin, where literally you can't do anything, even though 3 mining companies control the whole hash rate. So that's an argument for another day. It might be the most decentralized network. All the way to the top, which is let's have all the features to stop this. So, let's filter out addresses, block things like USDT, etc., like full control. And in the middle, I think, is where we need to find the middle ground, which is somewhat decentralized, okay, minimum features to enable, under the cases of bad actors, to save user funds. And I think this is a good example. To me, the most important thing is the reaction from the organization.
Well,
are they honest?
Yeah, let's turn the script though. Yeah, like you and I run that Spaces last week for 2 hours with James Wynn and his trade. And
we can talk about that. We can talk about that. Yeah, that was insane.
But his wallet was blocked. His wallet was blocked.
Yeah.
His Coinbase wallet was blocked. He couldn't convert to USDC on Binance. I mean, so to what extent is this centralization? This is the death of centralization. That is the piece that we all hate.
Tell the story, Dan. Tell the story exactly. Well, tell people the story.
It was fun.
I love this. I think you guys were on a space with him.
Yeah. For like 2 hours.
So,
I was in the...
James Wynn is on my community. He's one of my traders. He's been following the Wyckoff, the liquidation levels. He hit it big on Pepe, made $40 million. And from then he's built up, he's made a lot of money trading. But James came on the space. We were live listening to the situation. He was up huge. He had $1 billion long on Bitcoin, and he couldn't take money off centralized exchanges. They blocked him on Arbitrum. Yep. So this is happening, okay? Depending where you look, this is happening. There is this level of control. There is no real decentralization. At the end of the day, if the money gets big enough, they will block you. So we've seen it in real time. Carry on.
Yep, and it was fascinating. And I was saying, oh, you want to move your liquidation price down to about 103,000 because it was a bit of a nervous time on... Was it Wednesday? It was last Wednesday. The market was very rattled, and we saw Bitcoin hit 112, then fall down fast. Went from 112 to 107 in a very short window of time. And he was trying to get 50 million out of Binance to add collateral to his trade. It was brilliant, Manda. You would have loved it. But it was also quite alarming. You could tell the guy was literally probably needed a change of underwear because he was like, all we needed was a reach down about another $2,000, or I think it was $2,000 or $3,000, which can happen very fast in Bitcoin. And he was liquidated. We're talking nearly $100 million down the toilet. Isn't that correct, Marty?
Yeah, I mean, he was at the verge of liquidation. He was a couple of $1,000 away from liquidation, and he was asking everybody on the space. What should I do? What should I do? I'm an inexperienced trader. I got lucky. What do I do? What I do? And we all said, some of us said stop loss at 106,000, cut the losses.
Add collateral.
Most of us were like, lower your liquidation rate. So he was like, okay, I'm going to lower my liquidation. I'm going to get more margin. So he went to his exchange, tried to get more funds, and was blocked. So they literally practically tried to make him not be able to add margin.
Yeah.
Now think about that.
And I've been in similar situations as well. There was a time when I tried to add collateral to a perp on Solana, and of course you swap your fiat or your USDC on Coinbase, and then Coinbase had this weird delay where they were, I'm used to waiting 5 seconds for my Solana to leave Coinbase, go to the perp. They didn't for like 6 hours. So I could have been wrecked, Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
He would have lost 60 million.
Yeah. Anyway, Mando, what's interesting about this, though, is Hyperliquid jumped above. We spoke about Hyperliquid last week. It's now up above Sui as we speak.
Absolutely.
So do you have a hype position?
I have. I actually took it off today. I do think that I'd much prefer what we've seen recently is that like Hype has been trying to become more of a chain. You've seen people bridge theirs to because Hype is technically a chain. I know Marty will probably laugh at, when we spoke about that before, but it does have 4 validators. It has, I think it's over 21. Oh, 21 now. It has about 2 billion of TVL, and people have been like, right, I'm going to buy NFTs on Hype. I'm going to buy meme coins on Hype. This is going to be my Solana play. I don't see a lot of value in that, and it's been a good little run up. If you look at it as a chain, it looks cheap because it makes more than many of the other chains, often combined, and that really comes from one app on the chain, which is Hyperliquid, which is their leverage trading platform, which is making $700 million if you annualize their current revenue, and they don't explicitly have to, but they are buying back the token with that amount. And if you look at that versus like Ethereum or even Solana, like, oh my God, like this is making more money, or at least close to the same amount of money as them, despite being a fraction of the current market cap. The FTV is quite high. If you look at it versus like other DeFi protocols, it looks slightly overvalued in my opinion. That's what I would say. Like if you ask someone to give you the hype bull pitch, they'll say, oh, it looks so cheap versus ETH and so on, all this sort of stuff. If you want to hear the bear thesis, look at it versus Radiant. Look at it versus some of the Solana DeFi protocols that are making hundreds of $millions a year, and then you're like, oh, okay, it actually looks a little bit expensive on FTD versus that way. Like Radium is about 2 to 3 billion, and makes hundreds of millions of dollars. So like 2 to 3 billion FTV, right? Whereas Hype is, where is Hype now? 38. So, and they're not that different in terms of how much revenue they make. So I think for this to continue at its current valuation, you really have to have it really has to deliver on this chain thesis. And it may do. We're starting to see the foothills of people start to really buy into that. But I think it takes a lot to be valued as a chain. I think it takes more than just revenue, as I've said before. So let's see.
Yeah.
I definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the daily stats, Hyperliquid is by far making the most. It's making 2.5 million fees a day, versus Tron second, which is around $1.3 million, and then Solana around $1.1 million. So it's booming ahead in fees. I think because we're going through perpetual season, right? Because of James Wynn, people are realizing they're moving from meme coins, the degens, into leverage trading, which I like. I think leverage trading involves more skill, more understanding of the market, more technical prowess, as opposed to memes where you sort of just take a big bet and you either get rugged or you go to the moon. This involves, actually understanding the technical structure, etc. So I think people are moving to Hyperliquid. People are gambling on Hyperliquid at high leverage. I believe, a maximum of 40x. So it's booming with fees. It's a highly successful use case. They absolutely knocked it out of the park. They've created the best perpetual trading platform. It's competing with Binance right now. So if anything, Binance will be the one who's now looking to, FUD or violate or exploit Hyperliquid. I think that's the biggest risk to anybody with $1 billion Hyperliquid position, is what is Binance's reaction going to be? Because clearly it's a threat. But then you see also Hyperliquid partnered with Arbitrum, right? So you see the top supply changes right now are on Arbitrum. The top net flows are on Arbitrum. People are moving money to Arbitrum from Ethereum to get it to Hyperliquid. So Arbitrum is actually getting the biggest benefit right now as an L1. They're getting tremendous amounts of flow.
As an
because
L2.
of that. As an L2, exactly.
Yeah.
Hyperliquid is stimulating Arbitrum's L2 business. You also see Arbitrum booming in stablecoins as well, because obviously when you come to perpetuals, people are making money and they're moving to dollars, right? So they're going through Arbitrum stablecoins back into dollars. Nice. And then obviously because of the SUI thing, you'll see a lot of stablecoin are moving off SUI. So you can kind of see in those flows what's going on. There's a movement towards the Hyperliquid as people bet on Bitcoin, and it's going through Arbitrum layer 2, which is getting a lot of flow. And you can see in the supply, in stablecoin supply, Arbitrum is getting a massive boost, which I think we didn't
noticed as well. I've noticed actually perp trading has gotten a lot cheaper on Jupiter. Probably it was a forced function because of competition from Hyperliquid.
Absolutely. Finally, we've got.
So I remember the fees used to eat you alive. Now they're negligible almost. It's crazy. But I do want to take a minute to stop here. Marty's link is below. We're not able to, the technical difficulty, stream to all channels today, but Marty's link is below. And of course, do not forget Mando Minutes. I have been a subscriber since probably day one. Daily news takes. Just go to mandominutes.com and you'll see all that stuff. Again, links are below for these guys. But we have a lot more stuff to talk about. So let's assume that this wasn't a black swan for the space. We have seen a little bit of a shakeup in the top 10 cryptos. And everybody's still saying, okay, what's happening with alt season? What are the chances alts peak before Bitcoin and alts have a winter, but Bitcoin goes into a super cycle? This is now the next narrative. Is like, okay, alts are dead. I always argue, and so do you, Mando, there's always an alt season to be had. You just need to position yourself and rotate, because there's always something pumping out there. But there's also some crazy stuff happening behind the scenes. What happens if the world tokenizes everything? And that could trigger potentially an all season. And then Bitcoin goes into a super cycle because of the hardness, because of the bond market and accumulation. Is this a harebrained narrative, or does it have legs?
I think that is the narrative. That is the 100% the narrative for Bitcoin right now. If you're looking to see why Bitcoin dominance has stayed so high, it's because of that. That is a thing driving the market. It's the same thing driving gold right now. And then people are overlayering, this can still happen altcoin season.
Bitcoin just spiked above 110. I said before at 7:30, before we start, we're going to hit 110 on this show. So just want to let people know that happened. So sorry.
It feels as though Bitcoin just has a relentless bid to it right now. Yeah. And I said before in the show, I preferred ETH to Solana for the next two months. That versus Bitcoin is still my biggest bag by a long way. It's just that if I'm going to bet on something right now, that's just what I bet on, just because I felt as though the narrative is slightly shifting. That being said, Bitcoin dominance could easily still just keep going higher. I thought it would have a little bit more weakness than it has, but the market's kind of telling you that it wants to own Bitcoin still. It's remarkable, that chart. The dips, if you talk about not being able to get into a trade here, that is a remarkable chart to look at. It has never really broken down once in 4 years now. That is crazy.
Yeah, I think we have two corresponding strategies unfolding before our eyes. We have Bitcoin being, we have Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. We have a state race building up. They're buying. We have reserve treasury companies falling in as fast as they can. I think it's a relentless bid, and that should be the name of the show. There is a relentless bid on Bitcoin right now. They are outpricing it. It's called the markup. The intention of the markup is to outprice the market, make it unaffordable to the regular person. Okay? Remember, there are two ways to get rid of your crypto, to get you to free you of your tokens. Drop the price, which is fear. You will sell out of fear into the institutional hands, or pump the price, where you will sell out of greed. And I think they've done the fear. They dropped us heavily to 80. They're now going the other way. They're going to force it so high that people will sell out of greed around the 114 mark, I believe. And then you just heard the ex-CFC chairman at Solana Accelerate this week in New York. That's Giancarlo, right? Christopher Giancarlo. He said there won't be a security offering, debt offering, equity offering of any kind that is not on-chain going forward. Now that is extremely bullish for execution layers. Bitcoin can't do it. So it's going to be Solana and Ethereum. I believe that they're going to get incredible boosts in volume as RWA turns on. We're looking at the Genius Bill. You guys followed it all week, right?
Oh, yes.
The Senate in unprecedented levels of acceleration of voting on these things. Why? Because Hong Kong just passed it. The EU has passed it. Russia has passed it. China has the digital ECNY. The US is behind. I'm personally blaming Elizabeth Warren for putting us behind, but we are behind, and we're catching up as fast as humanly possible, literally right now. And I think once that is signed and in law, I think you're going to see the biggest stable print ever in US history. They're going to print trillions of digital dollars and get them out there. And that won't be on Bitcoin. That'll be on Solana and Ethereum. And so at the end of the day, we've got this race. We've got this Bitcoin as a strategic asset, buying race, bid race. And we have this stable coin mania just about to unfold. Together with real world assets, let's not underestimate the power of these moves to bring, Doge, 35 billion onto Solana. Let's not underestimate these moves by stables and Securitize to bring the NASDAQ onto Solana. Let's not underestimate these things. We're talking about potentially quadrillions of volume settled by the DTC moving to tokenization. So we have the perfect storm. I think when you have execution layers competing with Bitcoin for use cases like we have now, that's when we see a true frenzy and possible short squeeze. So I think the short squeeze narrative is 100% valid.
Okay, good. And then regarding that mini old season that could happen that you both seem to agree with, we've got Kraken partnering with Bakkt and Solana Foundation to launch xStocks. This is more of that, the collision of two worlds, the TradFi stock exchange world with tokenization of everything, real world assets, tokenization of stocks, and the SPL standard being the only thing, the mission from Toli from day one for, we missed that. Day one.
Sorry.
From day one was to be a NASDAQ replacement. And here we have this. I don't know, did you see this one, Mando? Kraken?
Yeah, I think we've seen a few different exchanges do this, right? This is now the new thing for exchanges. Bybit were the first movers.
Yep.
Now Kraken's talking about it. Coinbase has been talking about it for a while. All of these guys, and they're doing it not in the US, if you notice. They're tokenizing US stocks abroad. Yep. So they're actually tokenizing them.
Man, is that not insane? That the first time you'll be able to buy tokenized Tesla will be outside the USA. I mean, that is profoundly wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but this is just how they have to do it first. So there's going to be a sandbox here of tokenizing US assets in other countries for people to trade on them. And I think you're going to see massive volume. Yeah. And I think it won't just be stocks, it will be commodities next. It will be gold, it'll be silver, it'll be maybe oil. You could see, like this. These are going after big trading venues. So I think Kraken has moved, but every single exchange will be doing this. Binance, I have no doubt in the next few months we will hear about a a broad scheme from Binance where you will be able to trade everything at Binance.
One of the
Everything.
dreams.
I have Alpha Office, by the way.
Yeah.
I know the Kraken people. They have now tokenized Apple, Tesla, and Nvidia. Those are the three. And it will be live by July. That's 2 months' time. So within 2 months, Europeans will be able to trade Nvidia tokens. Do you understand the implications of that? It's quite unbelievable.
Well,
this is because of because they had that advantage with the micro regulation.
Yeah, my dream has always been to trade pairs. So imagine an Nvidia Bitcoin pair, and then imagine being able to perp that pair. That would be just glorious. And that day is coming. So if you're listening out there, everybody, but let's go. We've got a big agenda to get through. We've got more stories to cover. First of all, tell us about this one, Marty. Bybit buying up Solana. Instead of, we saw Wintermute move another 300,000 Sol. Or Binance.
Yeah, we've found a new narrative. And I mean, just for the fans, if you want to get a bit of alpha, there's an application called coinact.gg, COINACT.gg. It's just unleashed their new homepage with all of their tools that I've been using independently. And you can watch major TWAP disruptions, which is basically, large institutional and exchange DCA. In other words, buying versus selling, what's the difference? And usually when that difference is large, when they're buying more than they're selling, then it's extremely bullish and they're accumulating. And what we found now is it's switching slowly from Binance and Coinbase to Bybit. Bybit has entered now and has really started this rally on Bitcoin. They are buying the hell out of it.
Holy crap.
And you monitor it live. So we have a new player. They lost 1.4 million in some strange exploit. Now they've become a major buyer of Bitcoin. So yes, we can talk about that.
This is the site you're talking about. You can see all the big spot market orders and all the other crazy stuff happening. AI fun, TWAPs, unbelievable. More alpha. Very, very interesting. So Bybit, could they be buying the Wintermute bag and preventing the ability for them to
Bybit, who are known to collude with Wintermute and actually have products together with Wintermute, are probably involved. I think you have jump trading, which are going to come online. You have Wintermute, obviously we know, have spent most of the last season controlling the market. Now we have jump trading getting involved, and we have Jane Street. But the biggest news for me personally is, I've said for years, when BlackRock acquire more Bitcoin than Binance, and BlackRock, we know, use Jane Street, they have the CME, and they control Bitcoin. They want to control Bitcoin's price. When they get enough more physical Bitcoin under custody than Binance, I think the tides will change. Well, last week, they passed Binance.
Oh, my God.
It's literally happening.
This is madness. Mando, you'll love this on this side. It shows all the big trades, okay? You've got Bitcoin. You've got Peanut. You've got Dog with Hat. You got you got Goat. It's literally, it's Bitcoin and it's memes trading huge volumes. Mad. Anyway,
those are all Wintermute coins, just to be clear.
Pardon?
Every single one of the coins.
We hit 110, 300 while we're talking. We're pumping the market. Solana 178. Keep going.
Okay. So let's get we'll try to wrap up. We've got a lot of topics to cover. MicroStrategy buys again another 4,000 Bitcoin. The average price is about 106K. So they didn't exactly nail the bottom, but they got pretty close considering they're already making profit on their buys. And I still maintain the fact that Saylor knows something is up. He has a very high degree of confidence. He can ATM the heck out of his MicroStrategy at a premium and buy as much Bitcoin as he can every single week. And they also turned on another $2.1 billion in Strife, which could buy another 10,000 Bitcoin. Anyway, it's bonkers.
And we saw Cantor Fitzgerald just announced they bought 1 million MicroStrategy shares.
Oh, they already have $2 billion worth. Yeah.
There we go.
And Howard Lutnick has a big bag too. So what people need to understand is these players have been sharing suites at Mar-a-Lago discussing the future of the US and Bitcoin and everything else. They know what's up. They are front running the world. I had a vision and a plan to sell and rotate my MicroStrategy. with knowing what these guys know, I'm kind of revising those plans a little bit. So that's craziness. What else is happening in the world?
Did you? Yeah, carry on.
We have
Sorry,
Elon
man.
Musk. Elon Musk has gone into the Hulk warrior founder mode, wartime CEO. He is back. He discovered, okay, Doge can only do so much. Now it's a waste of his time. He's out. He's back sleeping on the floor of the factories. And apparently they're launching X Money, which will be crypto-based, partnering with Visa, Nationwide, etc. How big is this? Again, I should have called this video the convergence of everything, crypto and traditional worlds. How big is this, Mando?
I think it could be huge. I think if you don't, I know obviously this show goes out on YouTube, probably primarily to its audience, but crypto lives on X. Like at least Western market crypto lives on X. There will be so much product market fit there from people who are on X all day if they then move into payments. It would shock me. It would shock me if they managed to not make that a massive success. And if you think crypto is the future of payments, then you've really got a very fertile ground there to suddenly turn X into being a payments giant, like absolutely massive. So I think they've been getting money licenses in all the states. I think he said today or over the weekend that they're very close to that. They've probably just got a few more states to go, but yeah, X turning into that is a huge deal. I think it's interesting to Elon obviously came in and tried to make all these cost savings doing Doge. He clearly did it. He exposed a lot of, let's say, semi-corruption and a bloated state in many ways. But if the 10-year starts to go above 4.5% to 5%, then it's a bit pointless. Like that could add another 100 billion to the deficit each year. And I think he's probably realized that for his job to actually work, it needed two things. It needed Doge and it needed the 10-year to go lower. Remember, that's what Bessent was all going for. And that's just not happening. So he can't just be there sitting there trying to find cost savings out of nowhere. So it's sad because I do think the aim of that was very, very strong, but maybe it was the wrong time for it to even be able to happen. Maybe it happened too late almost. It could, if it was done 10 years ago, it would have been way more effective than it is right now. Right now, they're facing potentially a debt spiral, at least when it comes to interest payments.
Yeah, by the way, Amanda, that was a golden clip for the DCA pod when you spoke about product market fit.
Back there, and there's another vector as to why Musk might be looking or about to look at, on-chain X. I don't know if you guys are aware, this last week there were a lot of X issues. You couldn't DM, you couldn't see your DMs. As somebody who uses X constantly all day, it was almost unusable. The reason that happened is there was a fire in one of the Oregon data centers. 25,000 users were affected. The fire, I've got it here, the fire at the X platform in Oregon led to widespread network outages affecting all things, The point is that he's still using sort of the older model where he has his own data centers, and he's sort of slowly playing the price. So if he had been decentralized in that case, that wouldn't happen. There's a lot of evidence pointing towards, with the Doge move through Wormhole, which is sponsored by several large players, including BlackRock, by the way. I found that out. There's securitizers now inherently associated with BlackRock. There seems to be a move towards Solana. I'm a Solana bull. I'm just going to put that out there. But X on Solana is my prediction. It's going to happen. Whether it'll happen immediately, I don't know. Whether it'll wait for the Genius Act to pass, or potentially, we all know the Genius Act is only the sort of doorway to the individual pieces being, voted on, debated, and signed into law. But I believe once he can, I think we will see X move to Solana.
Tell me in one sentence, Marty, why the XRP army are clinging to hopes and dreams that X is going to run on XRP. Can you shatter their dream in one sentence, please? Ripple.
Well, I just don't think it can. First of all, it's never been tested. XRP has never been tested over 100 transactions per second. And I know Elon Musk is a very metric-based man, so there's no way he's going to take that chance.
Yeah.
He's going to use the most tested network that's proven that it can handle the load.
Awesome.
And I don't think there's anything else. Plus, they're both based in San Francisco, and they have incredibly good personal relationships. Totally, and Elon Musk.
Good stuff. And some scary news as well. We have to talk about a couple of scary news pieces that people need to be aware of. This from Swiss Hodler. Christine telling the clueless peasants they'll have to get used to the ECB surveillance coin. Opt out with Bitcoin. Freedom is greater than control. She's kind of saying, I saw this little clip. It's like, oh, you'll have your cash, but they're throttling how much cash you can have and use. You can't pull out more than 600 euros or something like that. I don't know if those laws apply in all countries in Europe, but hinting the fact that the CBDC is coming, get ready, and could Europe become a kind of digital yuan China land? Mando.
Yeah, I think there's obviously they passed Mika, right, which was very restrictive and has in place since earlier this year. There've been two big pushbacks. Firstly, the exchanges, some of them are playing ball, some of them aren't. And secondly, on an individual nation basis, some of people have been like, we just don't have the ability to track this. Like, the ECB has pushed through some regulation that the states themselves have basically just been like, well, we need massive budgets to be able to fund the tracking of all this sort of stuff. So its implementation has been patchy at best. Like, I am in the EU. There's a number of, and I have a ton of different exchanges. I've only been asked like one exchange to kind of go through like a full Mika process, which has surprised me so far. And then on a government level, many governments have just been like, yeah, like actual implementation of this is going to take a lot longer than you think it will. Though it may be coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's just classic EU. Like,
Nano, did you see the front page of the Wall Street Journal on Friday?
No.
Okay, this is news you may not have seen. The front page, mainstream Wall Street Journal. Obviously, it's Kardashian, blah, 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 the main pictures. But on the left, it says, big banks explore venturing into crypto world together with joint stablecoin.
Yeah.
Okay, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, and Wells Fargo are considering creating their own banking stablecoin. I think that tells the story that's going to unfold.
Wow. That was definitely one of the biggest stories of last week, right? Like, and kind of puts into perspective why Circle's been desperate to kind of do an IPO and now is talking about trying to sell itself to Coinbase and XRP. Like, the big banks are coming. They're probably going to have even more government support than Circle, definitely more than Tether. And they don't need half the firms. This is why, like, the concept of, I've spoken about this before, like, what is an RWA company? Like, when TradFi comes, they're just going to do this themselves. They don't need you. Like, they will do this themselves. They may buy one of the firms, but like, they have enough financial sophistication to work out how to tokenize something, and they're going to do it themselves. And it's the same with stablecoins. Like, you think JP Morgan really doesn't think they're bigger than Circle? Like, JP Morgan just be like, okay, well, we can just do this ourselves. Like, we don't need you to hold dollars for us. Like, we'll just do that. So exactly. I think what you're about to see is a lot of the big TradFi firms come in.
Like we saw Zuckerberg, right? So let's just talk about it. We saw Zuckerberg 2 weeks ago talk about a stablecoin. Now we've got major banks in the US talking about a stablecoin. It looks like the next race that we're going to be covering in the next shows is the race to have the dominant stablecoin. And then how that is implemented into the commercial world is going to be extremely interesting. Are we going to have the choice to pick any of these stable coins when we purchase things? Or will we have a particular wallet with a certain bank or vendor of stable coins which we can use? How will that unfold in the UI for the user?
Yeah.
You see, that to me is the next narrative.
Exactly. I think
it's clear everybody wants their own stable coin.
Yep. And it goes back to the X payments thing and the integration of crypto into the whole world. You got social and you got that incredible product market fit that Manda spoke of. That will change the game. Then we have another crazy person out there, and I'm sorry for our friends in Australia. Australian Senator Rennick calls Bitcoin a Ponzi because you can't eat it. I mean, are people going full moron right now, or it's really
I mean,
sad?
my family's from Australia. 3 out of 5 Australians are batshit crazy. Let's just start there. So they're an
That's a great line.
extremely conservative nation. They say things like a lot of the time, but then on the other hand, you'll see a lot of really innovative crypto companies are in Australia.
But Australia is
So
very, very crypto friendly. If you look at I calculated, I have more Australians watch my show per capita than any other audience. The rankings are Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, Canada.
like there's no decoupling more than the users of crypto in Australia and the crypto regulators. They're more decoupled from the users of crypto to the US regulators. They're like so far ahead from their regulators. They're VPN friendly, put it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And then
but
we had
don't
another sad story.
Australia.
We're seeing a big rise in these kidnappings. We had one in Paris that was foiled. And then a crypto
Terrible.
investor in Manhattan has been charged with kidnapping and torturing a 28-year-old Italian man for a week or 4 weeks to extract his Bitcoin wallet password. I mean, this is it's shocking how this is escalating, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer things like MicroStrategy, because good luck getting that off of different centralized exchanges. But this is a real concern out there. Mando, do you think as the price of Bitcoin goes up, this will become more common?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I think this, we just spoke about this right now. Like, there is going to be a fight in the future between security and self-custody. And I think while nothing is perfect, you might be like, yeah, get your money off exchanges, hold it yourself, the government can never touch you, all that sort of stuff. That's one benefit. The other negative for that is somebody can tie you up in a basement in New York and ask your seed phrase for 2 weeks. Not to make too light of the situation, but that is happening all over the world right now. And I think some of the worst hacks can happen from self-custody. You're not just like, oh, I've got myself a ledger, I'm okay now. It's just a different set of problems which you need to be aware of. It is sad. It's happening particularly in France. They've actually, because France has a number of blockchain companies. The biggest one is Ledger itself, and a number of the Ledger co-founders have had this all happen to them, as well as some prominent exchange owners in the space as well. So it's happening a lot in certain places. That's what I would say. In the US, there was one in Vegas recently as well. There's obviously one in New York.
Are you afraid, Mando, personally?
I think everyone should be afraid. I think it's not something you shouldn't particularly. I mean, we're obviously having over a public face, but yeah, everyone should be a little bit afraid. It's good to be afraid. I do think that it will mean, like you said, James, that people drift more and more towards ETFs or vehicles where there's some form of, to get it off a TradFi rail is slightly more difficult than, let's say, the ledger in your wallet. And
it's impossible.
I go back to this stuff sometimes, like sometimes I feel like, maybe some form of centralized ownership is better, maybe like a custodian or that sort of stuff. And I have a range of different places. What I would say is don't have one form of ownership. Like, diversify yourself, like have some in one place, some in another. That often means that whatever happens, you're not going to lose everything. So like if you're going to do self-custody, make sure you have multiple multi-sigs or multiple cold ledgers. If you're going to do more centralized, maybe own a few different ETFs in a few different brokerage accounts, or if you're going to keep it on exchanges, don't just have it in one exchange, right? Have it on like 5 different exchanges. Like, make sure that you're protected. That's all I would say. And diversify your security.
Yeah, we got Tom Crown in the audience here, by the way. Shout out to Tom. Tom, if I knew we could have snuck you in. CTO sadly is recovering in bed. He has a bad cold. A couple of quick questions just popped in too. Can you give us a Zeus update? And thank you for that, Mando, as well. Everybody be safe out there. People are coming for you, but Zeus update, Marty.
Oh, huge Zeus updates. I mean, the chief programmer at Zeus is just an incredible man, and they're building like mad. Their whole next goal is to open source their software development kit, which means that anybody will be able to build a Bitcoin app. So it's basically native applications for Bitcoin on Solana. So you can literally build a Bitcoin app using Solana. You won't even know you're on Solana. And currently they're in process of building it. It's going really well. They have a lot of institutional clients that will be announced. Most importantly, mining companies, which came out of left field. So they've partnered with a lot of mining companies which have a lot of Bitcoin inventory that can now create yields. Remember I told you a few weeks ago, the large strategy right now is how to make yield with your Bitcoin. Not only the appreciation of Bitcoin, but yield. So obviously, MicroStrategies is a yield strategy. Nakamoto, Bailey's company, which now changed to Naka on the Nasdaq. We've got Jack Mallers in 21. These are all strategies, same as the Solana reserve strategies, right? You've got Solana DeFi Development Corporation, which they did the first stock split. So they're doing unbelievably well. They're up 3,000%. You've got Sol Strategies and a bunch of other companies also choosing Solana as a reserve strategy. The whole goal, people, is to create yield instead of just holding the asset. And I think Zeus is just another example of that. Zeus is fitting the narrative, which I believe this 2026's main narrative, which is multi-chain. In other words, the ability to use any asset to create yield via another chain which has the volume, to chase the volume. And right now that's Solana. So the open sourcing of the ZPL library is the next July release of Zeus. And there's a lot of institutional adoption. I remember I always told you guys, I'm a price action fanatic. Price goes down for many reasons. It doesn't go down because people are selling it. It goes down because people are bidding it lower with size. What's happening right now with Zeus is people are buying Zeus in large size at 20 cents. So it's a great, follow the smart money. Accumulate your bag now. And obviously Zeus is a secondary level infrastructure play. So don't make it your primary bag. I see a lot of people putting all in.
Yep.
We're not the all in podcast.
Nope.
We're not all in anything.
Yep.
James is a master hedger. I am a master hedger. You keep a well-balanced portfolio. If you land up all in on something, it's your own fault, firstly. Yep. And that's a very important thing to tell people.
And this is why rotation rotation is probably one of the most important things. Most important thing in investing is the optimization of your allocations. And second is rotation when your horses run out of steam. Mando, what do you say to that? Allocations and optimizations and rotations?
I get stuff all the time wrong in crypto. I always make mistakes. I just make that if they're not going to be bad enough to destroy what you've made so far. So obviously I've said before on the show, I always keep an amount in stables. I always keep an amount in Bitcoin, and then I just kind of DJ and bet with the rest of it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that you should always know that the amount of time we talk about other things does not necessarily mean that's the percentage size of your portfolio. Like I've said that Bitcoin is always the biggest bit in my portfolio, and stables isn't second right now, but it's up there. And yet we talk about a bunch of other projects all the time. But that's really the extra, when's a good time to rotate into something like that? Just make sure that you protect yourself at certain level. Wealth preservation.
I had Mike Cagney on the space. I don't know if you guys are Mike Cagney. I put him on the same level as Michael Saylor. I mean, he's so far ahead. He's just created a tokenized version of certificates, which is a 1940 law that no one has really worked out can be tokenized. So he's creating sort of bonds on chain. But he said that the 60-40 portfolio, which is 90% of financial advisors over the last 60 years, you're right, you have 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds, is completely blown up, correct? James, you would argue that as well. And he said the new portfolio that his clients are using is 40-30-20. 40% Bitcoin, 30% Solana, and 20% in others. Most of it, a lot of people are doing 10% or 20% in Sui, and then the remaining in their meme coin, secondary level, tertiary level infrastructure plays, etc., main ecosystem coins, etc., things like that. But that's what we're seeing emerging is a new primary market structure. Like bonds are no longer even considered safe. You saw the Moody's downgrade. Everyone should be aware of that. James, I don't know if you want to speak about that and the implications of that, but that is quite a profound thing, the degrading of US debt.
Well, that's what we started with Georgie Vesser at the very beginning. I mean, the world is waking up to the fact that debt is bad, fiat is bad, fiat is going to zero, and all roads lead to Bitcoin, as we've been saying for ages. I do want to tackle one thing because we're nearly at the end. We are at the end right now. Mando, you said ETH would outperform Sol. I'm going to do a wager with you on that one. I think Sol will outperform ETH. That's the pair chart. That's
for the next 2 months.
We're at.
It all goes down to what are the big catalysts for Ethereum? I don't know any.
Exactly. Yeah, 7 transactions per second, perhaps, and a
Don't get me
tenth
wrong.
of the users.
If a large company does a treasury strategy with Ethereum, I'll change my mind.
Exactly.
Treasury strategy with Ethereum. Why are no one doing it? Why is no one doing it?
So this chart here, by the way, is Sol ETH, and we're currently at 0.07. My wager is we go to 0.09, and Mando says we go the other way. So we'll see. Listen, we had some technical problems. I want to thank everybody for coming. We try to keep it late. You got people traveling here on vacation, and it's a holiday, and I appreciate you both very much. We wish CTO a good health soon, and everybody here, the great mods in the chat. Links are below. Sorry we couldn't stream to all channels. We have to use YouTube as a backup. But we'll be back on X next week. StreamYard was down. StreamYard bad. Fix it.
Wow, StreamYard down, StreamYard bad.
Yeah.
Thank you, James, for having a backup solution. That's extremely wise of you.
Oh, yeah. Always. It took me a while to get it configured because I'm on a different computer, and I too am not on my usual spot. So it was technical problems galore today, but we made it happen, and I want to thank you both for your patience and the wonderful audience too. Any final thoughts for the week? Bitcoin is above that 110.
I just think it's fantastic that we called all-time high, and it happened once again. I think that's very it's good for us. We're good at what we do, and I'm proud people listen to us. And just so you know, I'm on my way to the Bitcoin conference, and I'll give you full report backs, James, obviously with WhatsApp or what's going on, what I hear, any alpha, and we'll put on the show as much as we can.
Yeah,
and Mando, it's great to see you get better.
And just so people know, people asked, "Are we there?" Well. Marty is, I tend to be very kind of off the grid, introverted type. I'm not one that likes conferences. So, but
I'm just going to play golf.
There you go. That works. Play around for, put a Bitcoin on the line. But yeah, but I also summarize the Bitcoin event every day. And this one could be big. We got Vance there and others. But why the hell is that gold bug there? Peter shit. Why is he there? Just to stir things.
Have you seen the gold? You should watch the gold Bitcoin chart. That's my favorite chart right now.
Yeah, and we nailed that pair trade too. It was 5 weeks ago. We said now is the time to swap gold into Bitcoin, and that was at the time Bitcoin was like 76,000 or 80,000 or something. It was a crazy.
Just remember, you can't self custody your uranium. I always tell people that.
You can in your left pocket, but in your tight jeans. Yes.
You see, Trump passed the executive order on nuclear power.
Yep.
So the uranium was afraid.
Yeah, but the problem is they got to bring this power online, and we covered that actually. The importance of power for AI. It's a global security risk right now. It's China versus USA, and we need more power.
That's a story for another show.
Yeah,
but exactly. I still consider. I think that crypto regulation is no longer just something on the ballot. I think it's a national security problem, especially if they put the digital dollar on chain. And this is something we'll talk about maybe in another show.
Exactly. Mando, you bullish for next week? I mean, we're at above 110. Could this go to 120?
Yeah, I don't know at this stage. I'd be unsurprised if it happened with Marty, where we go up a little bit maybe and go back down. It's a nice weekend. You had a long holiday weekend. You just had a good headline out of the EU that they're going to take some more time to come to a tariff agreement. now that we've broken through all-time high, I just think that volatility just goes up. Like, you don't need to FOMO buy any day. Trust me on that. Like where were we 24 hours ago? We're like 106, 107K, was it? Went all the way down to like volatility will pick up. You can pick your spots every day or two. There will be a wick. There will be a decent wick, which you can buy. So you don't need to FOMO.
Awesome.
I mean, before we leave, do you want some left field final alpha from me?
Yes. Left curve, right curve,
Okay.
middle curve.
You remember I told you guys about Trump filing against Wilcox in the labor union Supreme Court case with, I believe, the intention to get rid of Jerome Powell?
Yeah, he's going to do it.
Well, they won the case. And in the actual case documents, it says, finally, respondents contest that the arguments of this case necessarily implicate the constitutionality of for-cause removal, protection for members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors or other members of the FOMC. So it's happening. Behind the covers, Trump is trying to remove Jerome Powell. We'll talk about that maybe next week's show. We'll see what's happened by then, but I have my thesis.
Yeah. The dollar, the long end of the bond, it's a catastrophe right now. And remember, the high net worth individuals have woken up to Bitcoin. They are the ones doing that perpetual bid. Future's bright. Thanks, everybody.
Well, how many people are texting and calling you from your family about Bitcoin right now?
Oh, I don't answer my
phone.
phone.
That hasn't had to ask them about it.
And a security tip: don't answer your phone. Don't read your email.
Exactly.
Stay away
Never
from all
answer a call.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys.
Lovely to see you guys again.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys. Enjoy the conference, Mark.
Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week. I'll be back in my office and we'll be back on StreamYard.
Okay. Travel safe. Cheers, guys.